I signed a memorandum directing the Attorney General to propose regulations to ban all devices that turn legal weapons into machine guns. We cannot merely take actions that make us feel like we are making a difference. We must actually make a difference.
President Trump under increased pressure as he has asked his Attorney General Jeff Sessions to draft a rule banning bump stock devices like those that were used in the Las Vegas massacre. It is likely seen as a good start by gun control advocates, including the young survivors of the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, who, as we speak, have been riding in buses to their state capital to face down lawmakers and demand a crackdown on gun ownership. But they are not the only survivors speaking out tonight, offering potential solutions. Patrick Neville, a survivor of the first of these disasters, the Columbine massacre, is now a Colorado state lawmaker. And he says if guns were allowed at his school in 1999, many of his classmates would still be alive. He's pushing legislation that would allow concealed weapons to be carried in schools. He says law-abiding citizens should, quote, defend themselves and, most importantly, our children from the worst-case scenarios. Mercedes Schlapp is the White House senior advisor for strategic communications and assistant to President Trump. Mercedes, good to see you. Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. Is that a viewpoint that the president would agree with in terms of the possibility of having more armed guards at schools?
Well, I have to tell you, the president this week is spending time listening to students, parents, teachers, law enforcement officials, education officials, to come up with the best and long-term solutions for dealing with school safety and also tackling the issue of mental illness. As we know, there's one common thread in so many of these shooters, and that is that of mental illness. So for the president, he's taking this week to have these open and honest discussions with these different individuals and be able to come up with a solid solution in dealing with these tragedies. As the president has said, no American child should ever feel unsafe in their schools. We believe this is an important priority for this administration. And obviously, he's also talking to governors as well as congressional leaders in order to figure out the best way to deal with this issue.
Yeah. But in terms of the possibility that what we need is more security at our schools, there's been indications that he is open to certain forms of increasing gun control, that he is understanding of the Cornyn legislation. Does he back the Cornyn legislation?
Well, at this point, the president has spoken with Senator Cornyn. Obviously, this is a bipartisan legislation. The president recognizes the need of improving the background checks, as what we have seen is that we need to fix these gaps in the background check system. Right now, you have the military and the law enforcement where there is this gap that needs to be fixed. And so while we have not endorsed a particular legislation, we are in discussions with Congress in figuring out the best way forward when it comes to this issue.
There was an idea put forth by David French in the National Review talking about how this really shouldn't be up to the FBI. It should be more locally handled. There should be a way for individual citizens to put together essentially documentation and say, I'm concerned about this person. He lives in my house. He has a gun. And that a judge could essentially create a judicially ordained restraining order to take someone's guns away if they're found to be mentally ill, if they're, doing things that are nefarious on social media. Is that an idea that the president would be interested in?
Well, clearly, we need to first enforce our laws. We also need to ensure that we keep guns out of the hands of those who are in danger of endangering of themselves or other people. We want to make sure that we take away all guns from certain individuals, and that would be those individuals who, again, pose a dangerous threat to themselves or to the community. And that is obviously the president at this moment is working closely with the different leaders in the agencies and our policy team to look at the different options that we have to ensure that these tragedies don't happen again. The president at this point, we've been grieving with those in Parkland. Obviously for us, watching these students and the horror that they've experienced, we don't want that to happen again in America.
I got to go, but he spent time with Governor Scott. Is the president considering what Governor Scott proposed, which is that Christopher Wray needs to step down or that people need to be fired who handled this situation at the FBI?
Look, the president has confidence in Christopher Wray. What I can tell you is, yes, there were failures in the system at the local, state, and federal level, and we did have those individuals who did see something and said something. Unfortunately, that did not. There was a breakdown when it came to the FBI and local law enforcement. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again, and there needs to be fixes to the system.
Oh, we look forward to seeing what happens down there tomorrow. Thank you very much, Mercedes. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you so much.